able to talk with you more about it. There we go. Then we also have coming up the beginning of next month, Startup Week. And I know a few of the, actually, I think all of the presenters today are also part of that, whether they have an open house or whether they are on a panel. So have a look out for Alaska Startup Week. It's the week of November 8th to the 12th, and you'll be able to actually even have a more direct connection with the presenters today and be able to hear more about and see maybe their spaces and their facilities that they've developed and built up. So on that note, first of all, we have Megan Milito and Lacey Hernandez from Elevated Oats, and I will mute myself, pass it over to them to present on their journey setting up and running Elevated Oats in the state of Alaska. So I think over to you first, Megan.
Thanks, Peter. Okay, let me share this deck. Okay. Forgive me, my keynote is like not loaded on my phone. So my name is Megan Militello, my business partner, Lacey Hernandez. We're going to be talking to you together, and we are Elevated Oats, and this is granola to fuel your adventurous life. So Lacey and I met in Iraq of 2007, and this picture is from the second time we were on deployment. And life continued on for both of us in different ways. And it was interesting too, because as we were going through the military and being air traffic controllers, it seemed like we were always kind of kept apart. And so this is really nice that we've gotten to do something together so many years later and have that together. So Lacey, and fast forward to 2019, Lacey is out of the Army and trying to provide stability for her and her family, but dealing with being triggered a lot through a custody battle with her and her husband and his ex. And so she started therapy and started seeking help with those things. Meanwhile, I was dealing with mental illness taking over my husband, and I sought refuge in my dad's basement in Alaska. And with nothing else to lose, I started therapy and followed my passion to become an entrepreneur. So with an Instagram post and a comment from Lacey, Elevated Oats became so much more than just an idea. We reconnected during the darkest parts of both of our lives. And after healing and lifting each other up, it became our goal to elevate your life just like we did ours. And we know from our own mental illness, dealing with all that stuff, that what you eat is really important. It affects your mood and your health. And it's hard to do that without just making everything at home. So take granola, for example. A lot of people do make it at home. I know I was, because everything you get at the grocery store is full of sugar, fillers, and broken promises. So with one banana bread granola recipe and 2 women on a mission, Elevated Oats was born.
Thanks, Megan. Elevated Oats is so much more than what's just in the package. We're a brand that helps you live the way you choose to live. Our granola includes fruits and veggies without all the refined sugars. It's lightweight and nutrient dense and crafted to keep you fueled through your next adventure. Because we believe that choosing foods that lift you up, mind, body, and soul is the gateway to living not just a good life, but an elevated life. A life full of health, growth, and connection. Here's what our customers have to say. I just snack on the oats alone and it makes me feel good. And this picture is of Larry. He's one of our customers. He took his climbing team, and him and his climbing team took Elevated literally when they summited Denali with our granola. He says, I look forward to feeding my 2022 Everest team next year some Elevated delicious breakfast. So right now we have 4 flagship flavors in a shareable 6-ounce bag. And our customers enjoy Elevated Oats in 3 main ways: as a snack on the go, as a hot or cold cereal, and mixed in with their favorite yogurt. We pride ourselves on giving you a granola that is nutrient dense and low in sugar. So why now? Someone in this room right now is suffering from anxiety or depression. And various studies have shown that a diet high in refined sugars reduces brain function and worsens the symptoms of mood disorders such as anxiety and depression. So eating for your mind and body has been a rising food trend this year because what we eat affects our mental and cognitive health. And after a long and difficult 2020, mental well-being has never been more important.
So since January of 2020, we have built the largest full-scale granola manufacturing facility in Alaska with capacity to produce 2,500 units per day. To date, Elevated Oats has over 40 wholesale locations, over 2,500 customers, have shipped over 10,000 units, and we've generated over 92,000 in revenue. We currently sell in three main ways. Our wholesale margins are 55%, and our retail and e-commerce margins are 73%. Last year, American consumers spent over $6 billion on snack bars alone, and the global oats market is growing at a CAGR of 5.4%. Our future goals include increasing our sales to match our capacity, expanding to the lower 48, and ultimately selling the company. But coming up soon, we are going to be doing the Alaska Startup Week open houses. We're working on some granola cups that are exclusively right now at Kaladi Brothers. So once we do our 6-month contract with them, that allows us the time to figure out how are we going to produce these? Who are we using for packaging, while also being able to test out this product on the market with someone. And then we're also going to be releasing within the next month new bags. We just got 8-ounce bags in the mail shipped. Our 1.5-ounce bags, we're going to have a small snack pack that will, we think, really separate us from other granola companies. And also, we're going to be doing the Natural Products Expo in March, and that's going to be huge. That's sponsored by like Bob's Red Mill. It's 9 different halls in Anaheim. So we're hoping that that'll really showcase us outside of Alaska. So we divide and conquer Elevated Oats and continue to adapt as we grow. I currently handle the operations, the wholesale relations, and the climbing of mountains. And Lacey handles the marketing, our numbers, and all of the artsy stuff. We also have a few other members on our team. We have Carl Moore. He does kitchen operations. He's been with us for almost a year now. And then we have Corey Giddings. He is basically our executive assistant and handling a lot of the sales, packs all of our retail orders. He started as an intern through students to startups with Center ICE, and we've been so blessed to have him and be able to hire him on as an employee. And we're currently looking for a digital and social media specialist, if you know anybody. So for our ask, we are looking for advisory board members right now, specifically someone that has scaled a CPG brand, and in line with our brand, a nutritionist or dietitian that knows how to communicate the connection between our diets and mental and cognitive health. We want to be able to communicate that to our customers the best way possible. Also, if you can go vote for us, we're like blasting this link everywhere on all of our social medias. We just made it as a finalist or as a semi-finalist for the Street Shares Military Entrepreneurship Challenge, and we can win up to $50,000 worth of scholarship, grant money, and legal services, which is huge. Like that would be massive for us. So the top 3 finalists will get to be pitching in Houston on the 7th of November. So it's like coming up. It's so fast. So go over for us. Lacey.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was putting the link into the chat there. Okay, so if you guys would mind trying our products, please go to elevatedoats.com and feel free to contact us at hi@elevatedoats.com anytime with any questions you have.
Totally. Thank you guys for having us.
Well, thanks, Megan. Thanks, Lacey. Great to hear your story, and great to hear how you're growing and the opportunities that you've got coming up. and also sort of some of the asks you have where there might be people listening in today that can help or just come and try your products and move you forward as an organization. And we're very grateful that Corey, who we connected with you for Students of Startups, has continued to work with you moving forwards. And Lacey has put into the chat for those listening in the voting link if you want to go in and vote Megan to be able to get them the support that they're looking for. So on that note, what we'll do is Laura will have you next talk about your story and as you've developed and built up Pandere shoes, and then we'll have a group discussion with all the panelists with some of the questions that we shared with you, and then anybody listening in, if you've got a question that you'd like to ask today's presenters, then please do put it into the Q&A, and myself or Kevin will bring those up for discussion. Otherwise, we've got some specific questions that we can have a sort of a fireside chat with everybody. So on that note, over to you, Laura.
Oops. Whoa. All right. Well, my name is Laura Oden, and I am the CEO of Pandere Shoes, and we make expandable footwear. So these are my feet. I have a condition called lymphedema. I've had this ever since I was a teenager, and this causes one of my feet to be swollen all of the time. Now, there are millions of people all over the world with similar problems who cannot fit into off-the-rack shoes. And this is because shoes don't accommodate individual needs like swelling or braces or wraps or bunions. And feet come in millions of shapes, and they change not only throughout the day, but throughout our whole lives. So our big idea was to make shoes expandable in the critical places where people need customization. Now, other companies have tried to solve this problem by making many shoe widths and inserts that go inside to take up space, but they just don't solve the problem very well, and they don't look good. So our solution was to make a shoe that fits many shapes, including normal feet, and to have a medical quality without a medical look. The market size is huge because there's a cajillion people all over the world who have chronic conditions that cause foot swelling, or are recovering from surgery, or they're pregnant, or they can't get their shoes back on after a flight. Now, since we've launched, we've grossed almost $1 million in sales. We've sold 7,500 pairs of shoes. 45% of our 2021 sales comes from repeat business, and we have a utility patent pending, and we are the inventors. And we have a licensing agreement with the North American Shoe Company to distribute a line of shoes called Pandere Sport through their network of 900 retailers. Now, I tell you all this because I want you to know how far we've come. And I'm not here to pitch you guys for money today. Instead, I want to talk about the obstacles that we face as early stage entrepreneurs. Now, I'm a big fan of entrepreneurship, especially for women and minorities. But all of us come into entrepreneurship through a culture that is addicted to a prosperity gospel. The primary obstacle of every business, bar none, is to get money so that you can keep going. Your ability to keep going is inextricably linked to your ability to keep cash coming in. And in the beginning, cash only comes in a few limited ways. It comes from your own pocket. It comes from contests, crowdfunding, grants. It probably comes from family. And maybe sometimes it comes from like terms with suppliers. And there's a lot of, getting money has a lot of game-like qualities to it. There's strategy and tactics, there's rounds and wins. And like most interesting games, there's also inner discovery, perseverance, and one's own ability to negotiate support. Now, I would also point out that this process is treacherous. It reveals your personal vulnerabilities. It's very hard on your financial stability. It compels you to make predictions that are entirely impossible. And a win rests on your ability to get people to buy into your vision despite your inability to predict the future. Most businesses, and 50% of businesses, and for 50% of businesses, the setup to fail is baked into the recipe. Most businesses take at least 5 years to get on their feet. 50% will fail before year 5. So the time between 1 and 5 is truly perilous. And during this time, the risk is very high that you'll run out of money, enough money to keep going. Investors and banks want very high returns. These are all more expensive to early stage businesses. So I have to ask if we're going about this the right way. Why do so many businesses fail during this perilous time when entrepreneurship is something that we want and value? For example, there is a ton of money out there to be had. Yet Harvard Business Review reports that in 2020, only 2.3% of VC funding went to women-led businesses in 2020. And my favorite statistic is this one. A new 2021 report from Morgan Stanley shows that investors think that women and minorities are already plenty funded, even though they're only getting 2.3% of the VC funding out there. In fact, the report shows that 21% of investors think that women and minorities are actually overfunded. And what do you think Morgan Stanley decided to call this report? It's called the $1 trillion opportunity. So there's gender bias in the funding system. We know this. And this lines up with my experience. Investors expect women and minorities to be further along with the cash they've already gotten. Now, I wish there were more channels of support during year 1 to 5. The stress and anxiety and pressure is real. It takes a huge toll to push through these obstacles. And you can say that this builds character or weeds out the weak, but in reality, the pressure creates a lot of trauma. I mean, look at how far we've come, and we're not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination. Now, despite the setbacks and the pandemic, and that we're all still in this perilous period, there are really good reasons to persist through entrepreneurship, because this is the way to change the world and make things better. Entrepreneurship unleashes creativity. Entrepreneurship unleashes decision-making. And this combination of control over decision-making paired with creativity is powerful medicine. And if you have a vision of how to make a better widget or food or product or service, then that vision cascades into hundreds of thousands of decisions. And those decisions and how you create that business and the culture that is born in it holds our future. Everyone knows starting a business is hard. Most fail, a lot of them that should have been supported. And it's worse if you're female or Black or Latino or trans, or English isn't your first language, or you live in a place with sucky internet. Your ability to succeed is directly related to your ability to persist through all of these obstacles. And yet you are likely drawn to entrepreneurship specifically because of this, because you're interested in removing those obstacles and making things better. And this is what keeps me in the game. I want to make things better. And I'm a little mad about the impossible odds. It's year 1 to 5 where we lose people. That's where the gaps and the mismatching of resources are. Too much goes to too few at the expense of the whole. So if you want to change the future for yourself, for your family, for your community, or for the planet, this is the game you want to be in. And I want to be here because this is how I make things better. And I hope that Pandere doesn't become a statistic, because I know that we are making things better. Stop share.
Thank you, Laura, for that very open and honest thoughts on how the differences are there, the direction and the growth that Pandere has been able to develop, but also some of the funding differences that occur, and how to think about as a statewide community that the state as a whole could look to support businesses of all with owners from all different diverse backgrounds. So I guess we've got a few questions to bring up for a discussion, and any of the attendees listening in are also welcome to bring up some questions. But I think the first one from my side would be to say, what was the best advice you got as you started off, or what's been the best feedback or the best information from an advisor you've got that helped you to then move forwards? It was something that you can pass to others to say, this was obviously individual advice, could be specific to your business or the industry that you're in, but what was some advice that you were given early on that really helped you as you started off to think, okay, this is what I want to do, this is the direction to go? What was some advice that you got that really helped you to move forwards? And anybody is welcome to answer that question. And I know it's a very broad question, or it could be very specific to your individual business, but Megan, I see your hand, I see the elevated Oats hands are up, so I'll pass it over to you, and then that gives Laura a chance to think of what might be her.
I'm curious actually what Lacey's is, if it's the same. I would say it would be dialing in your customer avatar, like really knowing who you're targeting, because that is what everything all the decisions about our business, I feel like, revolves around that person.
That is so true, but that would not be my one piece of advice. I feel like my piece of advice would be to just do it. I'm reading this book called The Good Girl Myth, and it says, like, basically we have this tendency to try to make everything perfect before we put it out on the market, and we might be producing something that the world doesn't even want. So if you just get your idea out there and get feedback on it, at least you'll know if it's a viable product or not.
You, Laura.
Well, I don't want to copycat, but I'm going to have to copycat, because I mean, I think that's the most important thing, is making sure that you've got some market fit, because what you don't want to do is waste all your resources on something that isn't going to get traction. And so finding a way to make sure your idea is something people want to buy is definitely the most critical thing. And I think you can get there a variety of ways. I mean, I think dialing in on finding out who your customer is a great one. I think, surveys and small tests and soft opens and things like that is another way to find out. But, for us, we had pretty good traction even before we started, because we started a Facebook group that allowed us to get a much better sense of who our customers were. But, just because you have people who want to buy your product doesn't mean you've worked out how to sell to them. And what I think is one of the biggest lessons, this doesn't really fall in the advice bucket, this is more in the lessons bucket, that it really took us like 3 years to figure out what were the right words, what was the right messaging. And that's probably a little bit unique, a little more relevant to an e-commerce business if you're trying to get people to go to your website, but figuring out the messaging and how to actually communicate your value prop is very hard. And it actually takes a long time, unless you get lucky.
I agree with everything that was being said. That sort of your discovery of your stakeholder, your customer, whatever term you want to use, understanding their pains or their needs and how your product or your value proposition fits those. It becomes a must-have, sort of something that they must have in their hand. And therefore you have that sort of captive group of customers, or whatever the term you want to use. And then you can look how to build upon that with that. As you said, Laura, I think one of your statistics was your sales of your returning customers. You found that segment. It took a while, as you said, it can take a while, but getting that return segment of the market that you're working with, then you can say, okay, now we've got this, we can look to grow and to build. So my next question is, and you probably touched a little bit on it as you were going through your sort of backgrounds and your thoughts, is what surprised you the most starting a business? What was the thing that sort of gave you the biggest, because from your backgrounds and sort of your previous careers, that it's starting a business was for some of you something new. Sort of what was the biggest surprise or the biggest skill? Let's say maybe it's the area where you saw the greatest challenge. What was the biggest surprise for you starting up the business?
I can go first on this one if you want. Megan's nodding. I think one of the things that caught us off guard that probably shouldn't have is how intense the impact of returns is for a business like ours. Our business has a lower return rate than the national average for shoes, but the impact on the business is absolutely astronomical. And I think we made some wild guesses in the beginning about what that would look like. But you know, what's going on is we've got Amazon training the entire world that they should buy whatever they want and they should send back whatever they want. And I promise you, Amazon is not paying that cost. The people that are paying that cost is the businesses. And they have to fund that somewhere. And that's what we ended up doing, because we started out naively giving away free shipping. And, you know, all of our advisors encouraged us to do this because it seemed the only way to compete in the marketplace. And we ended up changing that. Not only did we leave Amazon, but we added shipping. And we discovered that one of the biggest things that we had to figure out in order to make our business sustainable is we had to figure out how to stop people from buying 5 pairs of shoes and returning 4 or 5 and then wanting another round. So, I mean, I could go on and on all day about that one, but that one is, I do think we've turned the boat on that because we've incentivized a bunch of things to happen before they buy. And roughly 30% of our customers now actually give us foot measurements before they buy. But anyway, I could go on and on about that, but I would say, you know, making sure you've thought through all of the costs, and something like returns is the kind of thing that comes up usually after you start. It's not something you can really know what your return rate is until you start.
Thanks, Laura. I thought that was great.
That was awesome. Over to Lacey and Megan on what surprised you most. We've got another question from, just to let you know, we've got another question coming on the chat and we'll come to that. So thanks, Erin. And I think Becky will come to yours, but I'll pass it to Legan and Macy for their response to the first, to the one on what surprised them the most.
Oh, for me, it's the mental challenges. It's the challenge against yourself. Because I think a lot of Yes, definitely. There's a lot of fear involved, a lot of questioning yourself, all those voices in your head, all those naysayers that you hear. And you have to fight against that every step of the way.
One person can say one thing and it can create so much doubt over, and you're not even thinking about how far you've come in the past 2 years, like what you've actually built from nothing. And it's crazy. The mental part is huge. Even like, I remember just being like, I don't like selling. Like, I don't want to ask people for money. And it's like, no, you're providing value. Like, it's all about how you're wording the stories to yourself. Really trying to come up with a better dialogue, especially having like that learner's mindset 100% of the time. Like, you have to put your ego aside, and in relationships too. Like, you have to be able to have relationships because your people are very important to make everything happen. Totally.
I agree with everybody's statement. Having done a co-founded a business while staying as an academic, it definitely, all of those, the mental aspects of just the challenge of doing it, and you've all gone in 100%. And when I was doing mine, I was doing it with parallel with another one. So I'm completely see your aspects as you've got in 100% in the mental and the challenges that come from doing that. And I think Megan, you saying one naysayer in the background, and you're like, ugh. But then you've got to say stop and go, okay, well, hang on, look how far we have come. Look where we can go. Okay, there may be one, but that's one in, you've got all of this on the other side that's demonstrating how much of a difference you've made to people's lives, how much you're making it so they have a better lifestyle, or with Laura, the ability to have a more comfortable walking environment. That's just the ability to change that. Just you're changing people's lives for the better. But both of the businesses are doing that. I think that's seeing that aspect of it gets you through some of those mental challenges, some of those naysayers where you're building a business that's got a societal and cultural and psychological benefit to the community as a whole, and to the individuals as well. So thank you all for the work you've been doing on that. So the question from Erin in the chat was, in terms of co-founders, obviously Megan and Lacey, you met in your previous careers and you had that commitment of moving forwards. But I think in terms of co-founders or long-term collaborators where you've worked with on whether it's supporting products, or how did you sort of make those connections and get that long-term commitment? How did that process happen? Did it come from knowing others that you've known and can rely on trust, or was it just through long-term connections, meeting up, socializing, and just getting to understand how to trust that person? What was your process in terms of building those long-term connections for business grow, whether it was product development or advocates for the product? Sort of, how did you go along, make an assessment of this is the person or this is the group that I want to work with? And maybe we'll go back to Megan and Lacey to respond first on this one.
Yeah, it's actually, I think it's kind of funny because I had asked Lacey about, she was going to school to be a graphic designer, and I was running an Airbnb and like thinking about quitting my job so that I can just do entrepreneur stuff. And I was like, I'm going to own a health coaching business. Lacey, I need this logo for this health coaching business. Can you create something for me? And then the idea didn't really stick. And then all the crazy stuff happened in my life. And then I'm like, hey, I need this logo for something else. And we just started talking about real life stuff also. Like, she made the logo, but then I'm like, but I need this and I need this. And I'm like, I can't do it alone. And I think I just kind of like roped her into Elevated Oats. Without us really knowing what was happening. It was all of a sudden both of our lives, like, and then we just would talk every single morning, and it just turned into something totally unexpected. I mean, I didn't think I was going to be signing a 5-year lease on a place, like, and then it just kind of snowballed so fast that it just like, this is the life now. Yeah. And then Carl was a blessing. We've had him for almost a year, and he just kind of came up through a MEP meeting that I was having. And someone was like, there's this guy, you want to check out his resume. And then same with Corey, like he kind of just came to us also. So we've been really lucky with our people, I think.
It feels right. Like everything's kind of falling into position. Not to say that this hasn't been hard. It's been a very hard journey, but it's almost like we believe, you know, like in kind of in our message, like the whole mental health aspect and actually like helping people eat healthier and making healthier decisions with their lives. That I think has been the motivating factor that keeps us going.
And I think you highlighted that sometimes the opportunities that you don't know sometimes where the opportunities are, and just putting your foot forward. And like with the students and startups, we just connected, and it ended up with Corey. It worked out really well, and he's now actually an employee. So it was just, but you had to take that step of like, we're going to work with an intern this summer. And it's like, there's a chance it may not work, but there's a chance it can. And you've got to take that chance that it could work. And then you'll actually, because until you do that, you're still going to be where you were before. So it's sometimes taking that step. So Laura, over to you in terms of the sort of building those relationships with those long-term collaborators and groups that you've been working with as you've been growing and building.
Yeah, well, you know, there's a healthy dose of luck and there's a healthy dose of intent. So I would say, if you're not starting a lifestyle business that's just about you and, you know, something that's doesn't really have a goal of scaling and maybe exiting, I would say having co-founders it's almost essential. When, you know, just thinking back to what Lacey and Megan said, thinking about the emotional toll of the startup and getting through it, it's just almost incalculable. Like you can't really understate how emotionally challenging it is and how financially challenging it is, and how hard you end up pushing yourself to do things that are far outside of your comfort zone, even if you have lots of experience. I had lots of relevant experience. And anyway, I think that, you know, having more than one mind involved in working, because entrepreneurship is really about problems. It's really about problem solving. And we all know you problem solve better when you're not in a silo. I would advocate for 2 or 3 for us. You know, it was a little bit kismet. We met at a startup weekend. None of us had a real intent to start a business. We just liked each other and we knew we could get along. And that seemed like enough to explore. And so we explored for 6 months, and 6 months later, we had made an agreement amongst the 3 of us that if we couldn't find a business that was already doing this within 6 months, then we would do it. We would try to do it. And 6 months later, we couldn't find anybody. So, you know, our core team has shifted since then. In some ways, the 3 of us who launched Pandere was the easy part. We didn't know anything about the shoe industry. We live in freaking Alaska. There's no shoe industry in the US, let alone in Alaska. So we had to do what I sort of often sometimes refer to as the Alaska problem, which happens with any business. It's whatever is the aspect of your business that you're isolated from. You know, physically we're isolated in Alaska. Luckily we have Zoom and all these other things now that can connect us, but you know, we've got a time zone difference. That's a huge problem. Meeting people, networking. So that was kind of a long way of getting around to the fact that our other core partners, which are not owners in the sense of founders, but critical to our start, was when we finally got connected to the right people who could help us get manufacturing done and make the product. That was a long answer.
No, it's fine. As I said, this perfect. This is sort of the idea of what I wanted. Is it really, if we're in person, we'd be sort of sitting around like a fire type of thing, having a chat, people in the background listening in. So it's really just I think this is a big aspect of the Alaskan ecosystem. It's a friendly environment. It's a supportive environment. Advice that people can give. The ability to highlight developments, places where you can come in and ask for collaborations. Alaska is a place where the degrees of free separation between knowing people is much less than it would be outside. So if you don't know somebody, then you probably know the person that knows the person you need to connect with. So I think in that side, it's great to hear all of your thoughts and your journeys going forwards. And I guess sort of my question to you is, do you have any questions for each other? Any the questions you have on sort of how each of your businesses has grown, or any because that's something that intrigues me is when we have people coming in to talk, is what might they ask each other? So over to you, Lacey.
I have a question right off the bat. You said you didn't have any like experience making shoes. So what was your like first step? We have this bowl that we want to make, right? So what was your first step in creating the shoe?
Well, we spent, we sort of did the internet search, and we found somebody who was like a shoe consultant. And we spent about a year, something like that, maybe not quite, working with that individual. And at the end of the year, we finally got a prototype out of Taiwan, I think. Okay. And it was just utterly not usable in any way, shape, or form. There was absolutely nothing about it that was functional. But we got a little bit lucky with, even though we wasted kind of a year, we learned a lot during that year. But the thing that we got lucky with is he kind of knew that we had a good idea and that he wasn't cutting it. So he turned us on to another person who ended up becoming our really critical partner. He's our manufacturing agent, and he coordinates the designers, and he'll send us drawings and samples, and we'll do the fit testing and make corrections and say, no, we don't want that, we want this. And he coordinates with the factory. He found us a factory. So that's kind of how that, and we just have a really, really good relationship. So we got lucky there.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. That's awesome.
Yeah, my question for you guys is, do you see, I'm just curious because I think yours and our business is a little bit opposite in our location of who we target. And I'm just wondering if you guys see kind of expanding outside of Alaska as the bigger opportunity, or is the bigger opportunity here in Alaska for you guys?
Outside of Alaska. Outside of Alaska. It's just a small market here. To be so consistent with sales, and like we have like we're competing against a lot of people, surprisingly. So I think too, like we've been targeting like made in Alaska, a lot of made in Alaska things. So we have this really nice base community of people that are very local. But we also want to be bigger than that too.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, like our product is only $8 a bag right now. So we have to sell a lot to get any revenue, really is what it boils down to. It's like to come up to return on investment, ROI. Yeah. So the plan, I guess, would be to take over Alaska for the granola game and then expand. We'd like to keep, the factory in Alaska, but how can we expand to the lower 48 and like not have to take that shipment, because shipments a lot. It's like $8 for one package at this point, and that's hard to swallow for a lot of people across the United States.
Yeah. So we're looking into like different things. You know, there's so many options nowadays. You can send a whole Connex of product down to the lower 48 and then have them just drop ship it from somewhere. So I think it just depends on how we grow, especially once we start doing like, if we go the route of distributors in the lower 48 too, like that's something totally different.
I'd ask you the same. Are you expanding outside of Alaska? Your e-commerce. So.
Our problem is Alaska. I mean, we don't really have a problem. I mean, I get a little, I love the made in Alaska thing. I think it's huge. I think I'm always a little bit jealous of it because I think it's so cool. And I think there's cachet there. And, we can't do that. Our shoes are made in Portugal. We distribute them from St. Louis. So we really don't have a problem getting shoes out to the lower 48. It's Alaska and Hawaii and Puerto Rico that we have issues with. And, what's very bizarre or frustrating is that we have a much higher return rate in Alaska than other places. So we've been trying to figure that out. It shouldn't be higher, but it is. So I think this part of it is, some of it is because we have a harder time. Alaskans are even more trained to buy the thing you want first, try it on and send it back. I think that's where our problem is.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. I was stationed in Hawaii. Megan lived there for a while too. And it's the same kind of thing. Like you kind of expect, I might have to ship this back because you can't get much. Maybe it's like trying to change the consumer's mind some way, educating them.
Yeah, well, we've put a bunch of processes in place for us this year that have been very effective. For one thing, we stopped giving away free shipping. And we do give away free shipping to some people, like, under certain circumstances. But at the end of the day, what we do is we incentivize people to give us their foot measurements. And then we've come up with our own proprietary sizing. And this is, if you think about our customers, normal people, they just think about length and width. But our customers have a third dimension that nobody has ever come up with a way of measuring. Right. And so, our customers can buy all day long and return because nobody's calculating that third measurement. So we developed our own internal proprietary sizing process so that we can, at the very minimum, peel people away from the edges of, there's no way you're going to fit into our shoes ever under any circumstances. Don't buy from us. That's one part of the returns. And then the other part is just getting it closer to where we think it should be. So we've got a bunch of incentives now to reduce returns. It seems to be working pretty well. So,
very smart. Very smart.
But it's that, it's that mid stage. You guys are there. We're there between 1 and 5. This is really the part. And I think this is the part where, if I was looking at Alaska saying, where do we need to look further? There's just so many gaps in this stage that are kind of incredible, especially with expertise. I think that we have a thin bench of expertise up here, and there's just a whole lot of things we could do that maybe don't even cost money that could offer better ways of supporting us, like those mid-stage businesses, so they don't go under. Because if they go under between 1 and 5 years, all those resources have gotten wasted. So anyway, okay, I'm off my soapbox now.
No, I think it's good, Laura.
No, I agree. Is that mid stage is there's lots of people kickstarting things. There's the larger ones, and it's how to. There's the funding valley of death you hear about, but then there's just the business itself supporting all the different aspects, not just the funding support. As we're coming up to the top of the hour, I want to thank you all today, Laura, Lacey, and Megan, for your time. And then just to remind you all, October 8th to the 12th is Alaska Startup Week, and Elevated, you guys will be having an open house on Tuesday, November the 9th, starting at 4 o'clock Alaska time, and Laura Pandere will be having one at 5 o'clock on Thursday, November the 11th. So if you want more time listening in and talking with these business owners here that have started up in Alaska, either through personal connections and an interest, Laura with her connection she made through the startup weekend with her original team members. And then you'll have a chance. I think they're both going to have an hour at least for those open houses. So that's coming up on the 9th for Elevated, on the 11th for Pandere. And the last thing to remind anybody listening in is we do have a second event focused around Women Entrepreneurship Week. We'll be bringing in 2 businesses that have been started by academic researchers from the University of Alaska Fairbanks, Professor Kelly Drew, B Corp Pharmaceuticals, and Dr. Bahara Bharati for Bharati Medical. And they'll be talking between 1 and 2 Alaska time on October the 20th. And the link, if anybody hasn't signed up, is included in the chat. But otherwise, I'd like to thank everybody, remind everybody that it is Women Entrepreneurship Week. So if you want to see other events that are being run during this week, there's about 200 universities that are connected with different panels and different areas. So Montclair State University's website, or WEW2021